Did you know a handlebar can totally transform the way your bike feels and rides?
This is Bromont, Quebec. We're here to test handlebars and to determine if handlebar compliance has an impact on a cyclist's riding experience. Now, before we get any further, what is compliance? Compliance. This is the amount of flex a handlebar has. If a bar is more compliant, it's more flexible. For our test, we invited two riders, Jeremy and Adam, to take 4 laps with 4 different handlebars and to give us their feedback and to guess the compliance rating after each run.
I can definitely feel it flexing, so.
So I'm on mechanics duty because I'm the only one that has seen the actual numbers.
This is Simon. He's an engineer at Faction Bike Studio and developed the compliance scale for the bars we're testing. After measuring the compliance of 42 handlebars, these are the 4 that were selected for the blind test. Each handlebar has a different compliance rating, ranging from 1 to 10, with 1 being the most compliant and 10 being the least.
This is exciting, not knowing what you got.
Now, let's get to the testing.
Let's do it. We'll see you in a few.
We just finished our first warm-up lap using our standard, everyday handlebars. I gave that an initial rating of 7, oh no, I did this backwards. I'm gonna give it a rating of 3 on our compliance scale of 0 to 10, with 0 being more compliant. I'm going with that as my baseline for now.
So I gave my bar a rating of 5, so right in the middle, and now I can base the next bar if it's gonna be stiffer, more compliant, and kind of see where it goes from there.
Switching handlebar after the first lap.
What's your first impression?
Feels like a handlebar. I'll definitely know more at the bottom of the next test run.
It feels what?
Feels compliant.
Okay, let's go.
I like how Simon knows. It's like asking questions about Santa Claus, and like he's your parent. You don't know. Let's see what it's feeling like.
This one feels sick. Maybe even more compliant than what I'm already riding.
Control-wise, I felt much of a difference, personally, but just a lack of absorption, I guess. It's different from what I'm accustomed to riding most of the time. Definitely felt a bit stiffer, which to me presented primarily in the form of like pressure and on my palms, almost like a slight bit of pain towards the bottom of the run. But, I mean, totally manageable, but prefer something with a little more forgiveness to it than what I just rode.
The bar I just rode was definitely more compliant. It smoothed the trail out a lot more. Very similar to my current bar that I ride every day. So that was cool, but definitely not the same bar. Making this as detailed as I can.
I think I can actually see flex in that when I push on it. You see that?
Yeah. Very interesting. The sweeps felt very nice to me, so I was comfortable on it. It was definitely a little stiff, but not too stiff where I felt like I couldn't ride it. I could ride this bar and be happy with it.
It felt comfortable riding. Doesn't feel like the sharpest necessarily handling out of that, but also if that bar was on my bike, I wouldn't have a problem with it.
Preference?
The rim bed itself.
Yeah, this feels good.
I think top to bottom, it'll give us a pretty realistic hand fatigue. Yeah, nice and stiff. Maybe a bit too stiff for me, but we'll hop into the next bar and compare.
Like whole new world. Like the way that it steered, the way that it like tracked, just everything was, yeah.
Would you say it's positive or negative?
I would say negative.
Okay.
A lot stiffer, and as I was like cresting roots and like looking for traction, it really wanted to bounce, and I felt like it was harder for the front end to track and to stay in control, and it really wanted to like get twitchy. And the fatigue wasn't horrible as I was riding, but as I got to the bottom and finished, then I could feel that my forearms were a bit more pumped than usual. So I think if we were to ride for longer, it would start to fatigue and get some more hand cramps.
Yeah, that lap was good. This bar feels stiff, but also not like overly harsh, if that makes any sense. It feels like very responsive to steering and rider input, but at the same time, it didn't beat my hands up. I'd say the middle of the road in terms of the compliance compared to some of the other things that we've tried so far. And that's based more on its ability to like absorb vibration than how stiff it feels.
I'm gonna put that one, I'll put an 8. So bar number 5, you're getting an 8 on the scale. I think I'd be surprised if there was a stiffer bar.
Last bar. I mean, there's not a lot to tell from the parking lot test, but I can notice a little bit of obvious flex in this bar, just pushing on it. To push on it, you can just like twist it. More than any other bar so far, so we'll see how that translates on the trail. Yeah. Yeah,
It's got some flex.
but I also don't ride in the rain much.
I don't know if you can visually see it or not.
Dry as hell.
Alright. Not too much difference flat pedaling, but as we drop in, it really starts to feel, yeah, very, very compliant, like pretty next level, to be honest.
So that bar was definitely the most compliant one we've ridden yet. It had some pros, but I think for the most part it was almost too compliant for me, and I felt like I lost some structure for how I would ride, and I felt like it just started to get a bit sloppy. But the pros would be that on big hits it really kind of absorbed that impact so that you were able to control larger impacts. But for just standard riding over the roots and into some like casual corners, so it just felt a little slow, not as responsive as a stiffer bar. Would I want to ride it every day? I don't know. I think it could be something to get used to, but I don't think I would personally want to ride this one every lap.
Back sweep is my PMW. So. Easiest one, what do you think would be like the 0 bar?
I would say number 41.
Yes, I would agree.
Yeah?
My initial impression was that I had reduced control because of how soft it was. But then after riding it like longer, doing those little back and forth laps, I became more comfortable with it, and it didn't seem to affect my handling like it initially did. And yeah, even though I did get more used to it, there's other bars that I would prefer to ride over that one.
Which one do you think is the second most flexible bar, and where on a scale of 0 to 10 would you put it? Yeah.
It was really challenging for myself to differentiate which one was actually more compliant, as they had a very similar ride feel. For me, the number 16 bar, the Cro-Mag, the upsweep made it a bit challenging to understand exactly how the bar was riding. And whereas the 23 bar, the FSA, It had a really nice upsweep that felt comfortable for myself.
Mm-hmm.
So I would prefer this bar just because it felt comfortable and the shape. But as for compliance, the 23 and the 16 felt identical.
Okay. Even in the parking lot, just doing simple flex test on the bike, I could tell that number 23 was on the more compliant side. I ended up ranking it at 4.
Okay.
So just below the median line.
Yeah. Yep. It was actually like 3.5, so you're pretty much dead on.
Yeah, it felt forgiving, but it didn't feel like it lacked, steering precision when I needed it to. And I would attribute, personally, the amount of rise to part of the reason it felt so flexible.
Yeah,
but I don't personally know all that much about the engineering of these things.
So this leads us to the stiffest bar on test, the new Proof Carbon.
I think it was too stiff. I was not able to keep the front of the bike stable. It started to skip everywhere, and I felt as though I couldn't keep it in a straight line. So for me, that was very challenging, as I felt as though I was willing to go faster and able to, but the bar was limiting some of my traction. It didn't really give me the best feedback on the trail.
Yeah.
Personally, it felt like it was doing a decent job at absorbing some vibration, but it could have just been me getting more accustomed to the trail at the same time.
So it's over 2 times stiffer than the titanium bar.
Interesting.
Yeah.
And this is the stiffest bar of all the ones you tested.
Oh yeah. Where do you think your personal one-up bar would stand?
I put it at a 3.
So the real score of the one-up is actually a 5. So it's straight on the average.
All right.
So we were not that far off. So it shows that in the middle, it gets really, really tough to tell which is where. So you, Adam?
So at the start of the day, when I did my initial run, I put my bar at a 5. But after testing all the other bars and kind of feeling it a range, I actually put mine at a 4.
Okay.
So that's where I would end up with, I would put mine at a 4.
Okay. So what if I tell you that it's actually the same stiffness as the stiffest bar? Okay.
No way.
Yeah.
That's very interesting.
What did we learn here today? A few things. Handlebar compliance does make a difference to the end rider. A more compliant handlebar will assist with hand fatigue, helping absorb hits on rough trails. However, more compliant handlebars take away some of a rider's responsiveness and feel. A stiff handlebar will give the most rider input. Your hands and arms will take a lot more impact, but you'll gain feel and responsiveness. The handlebars that fall in the middle of the spectrum, well, as expected, they split the difference. Ultimately, bars are a personal preference, so try a few and see what suits you best.